If you haven't noticed, Palkia is a little bit harder to beat nowadays. The reason for that is because on January 31st, raid bosses received a 20% buff to their HP. If you want to know more about that update, link in the description to a video covering all of that. But in this video, I'm going to let you know how to best beat down Palkia in these trying times. And may as well also throw in its meta use at the end there. So starting out, this is a fun meme infographic from Lorma96 from the Game Press crew. If you are curious, yes, all of us Game Press employees are meme lords, and it definitely shows. But yeah, this fight is a bit reminiscent of the Kyogre fight in the fact that it's a little dichotomous. It has two easy modes and it has one hard mode, and each mode kind of requires different counters. If you're up against Draco Meteor, you're going to go with the fairies so you can tank those hits better, but if you're up against anything else being Hydro Pump or Fire Blast, well then the dragons completely dominate Palkia. So this graphic is nice, but what do the actual numbers look like? So this is a graph of the Palkia raid using Dragon Tail and Hydro Pump, level 40 counters, no dodging, and best friendship. And this graph is actually the old Palkia raid graph. Yeah, so previously, before the 31st update, you only needed 21 DPS each, you and your friend, in order to do the duo, but things have changed now. With the 20% buff in raid boss HP, you now need 25 DPS each in order to achieve the duo. And then for the trio, you need 16.66666 repeating DPS in order to achieve that with your friends. And if you rope in having to re-lobby, I'd say maybe give it an extra DPS or two for some wiggle room if you want to have a more comfortable duo or trio achievement. Yeah, so what changed is the raid bosses have more HP now, which means it takes longer to beat them. We still have a 300-second time cap, so you need to do more DPS to get to the end of that battle that much sooner. So the best counters are still going to be Rayquaza, Dragonite, and Palkia itself. Yeah, so Palkia is a Dragon Water type Pokemon, which means it's only weak to Dragon and Fairy. Dragon resists Electric, Water is weak to Electric, so it cancels out, so you gotta keep your Raikos at home. They're not really gonna help you out here. And yeah, so these are the best overall investments for the raid. You can use Salamence or Latios or any dragon you want to really and fight this raid well, but if you want to be like most optimal premium about it, then yeah, these are the guys that you want to go with. So overall, I don't think Palkia is a great investment for a raid attacker, so I'd much rather stick with Rayquazas and Dragonites if you have them. Don't feel any pressure or need to power up a Palkia for this fight if you already have several of these bad boys locked in and ready to go. One thing that's kind of interesting to highlight on this graph is Mewtwo down here. Yeah, so back when PvP came out, there was a buff to type effectiveness. So super effective attackers dealing more damage and resisting more damage, which has highlighted the importance of specialists in these raid battles. And that means that generalists, such as Mewtwo with Confusion and Shadow Ball down here, isn't as potent as it was in the past. And this lack of potency is definitely highlighted in this particular raid, as we can see that Pokemon that are typically kind of diminutive, such as Kingdra and Giratina, actually outperforming Mewtwo. So yeah, just a little emphasis there that using powerful specialists are going to be a lot better than using powerful generalists. That said, if you've got none of these options powered up well, but you do have a maxed out Mewtwo, well, the Mewtwo will serve you quite well. Oh yeah, and if you're new to SwagTips, all these points on the graphs represent breakpoints or bulk points. Link in the description to breakpoint and bulk point calculators if you're not too familiar with them. Basically, it's based off of your IVs and your level, and being able to get that extra level of damage in on the raid bosses at these particular levels. So this is like the easy mode fight. What's the hard mode look like? And here we have it, the hard mode Palkia raid. Yeah, so you can see that the DPS of all the dragon types have dropped, as well as their total damage output. Total damage output is basically like tankiness, right? And yeah, big problem that all the dragon types are having, which is so detrimental to their damage output and their survivability, is that Draco Meteor is one-shotting them each and every time. So yeah, all these dragons, they can dish out some nice damage, but they go down super quick. And here you can see why Rayquaza and Dragonite are favored by me, and that's because outrage damage is much more consistent and useful, where Draco Meteor damage is kind of more flaky. In this fight where Palkia is going down immediately like everything else, you can see that Palkia is basically on the same level as Salamence. They actually have the same exact move pools, sans, Dragon Breath for Palkia. So, yeah. Sorry, Palkia, not so hot as a big dragon boy. So yeah, dialing back over here, we have the Omega Fairy types, and the two best ones are definitely Gardevoir and Togekiss. Gardevoir here is using Confusion, and Togekiss down here is using Air Slash. Now, if you are fortunate and you got Hidden Power Dragon, well, that Togekiss is going to be that much better than the OG Togekiss. And I think Hidden Power Dragon Togekiss definitely represents the potential that Togekiss could have with a Fairy type fast move. So far, there's still no Fairy type fast move in the game. If you are curious, there is no Fairy type hidden power that's not coded in any Pokemon game, including Pokemon Go. So sorry, Togekiss. Hopefully one day John Hankey will have some love for the fairy types and we will get that. But yeah, so if you want to tank the fight, I'd say these fairies are probably the best things to use. And I think for most raiders, I think it'd probably be best to go with like an A team of the dragons and then a B team that uses the fairies. The reason being is that it does take a lot to beat this raid boss. And if you're with a general group of random people that might be using like Agrons and Metagrosses, well, then you might miss out on the DPS needed to actually beat the raid in time. So if you start off teeing off the fight with your powerful dragons to ease the clock a bit and then smooth out the rest of the fight by rapidly re-lobbying with your fairy types, I think that would be the best sort of combo. For general players that don't have a whole lot of things, well then just use what you have and be mindful of what the better options here are. Now if you're curious about the breakpoints or the bulk points of the Pokemon that I don't have all drawn out like this, link in the description to the breakpoint and bulk point calculators again so you can figure that out for yourself. And within the next couple days, I should have an article up on GamePress that has a nice table spelling out all the breakpoints and bulk points for you guys. So definitely look forward to that. And then before I bop off of this graph, I do want to say that the duo is kind of unreasonable now for Draco Meteor Palkia. Yeah, so before when it was at 21 collective DPS that you needed between you and your friend, then it was easy. You know, all these dragons could make it. And then with re-lobbying, it was like, okay, Salamence, Palkia, Latios, maybe not, but definitely Dragonite and Rayquaza helping you out for the duo. With the update to the raid boss HP, I think the duo is now a little bit unreasonable for most human persons. Like, maybe you could pull it off with windy weather, but I think it would be a hot mess. So unless you're some like Omega Pro player that's willing to take the time and effort and spend all the Stardust needed to power up a whole bunch of Rayquazas in order to do the duo, I think it might be best if you stuck to like the trio or the quad. To be honest, if you want to maximize efficiency and your bonuses, going with 4 or 5 players is definitely the best route to that kind of success. So get the minivan ready, load up your friends, and make a day of it or something. So now that we know how to best beat down Palkia, just how good is it in the meta? And in the PvE sense, for raid boss battling and gym attacking, stuff like that, as I mentioned earlier, I don't think Palkia is quite as good as Rayquaza and Dragonite are. Rayquaza, definitely the premium raid boss smasher dragon type Pokemon, and then Dragonite is like the budget option. You can get that candy, you can catch those high level iterations. It's not as steep of an investment as Rayquaza is. So I think those guys are best because they have Outrage. Palkia's resistances are nice, but outside of the Palkia raid, I don't really see them coming into play against opposing dragon-type Pokemon. So it's a little bit, you know, it's rough. It's rough being Palkia. It's got Salamance's moveset, and even though it's got better typing and is bulkier than Salamence, it still has all of Salamance's problems. So it's definitely not a bad Pokemon. If you love Palkia or you don't have a whole lot of dragons, it is an excellent addition to your team. I just feel like Rayquaza and Dragonite are a bit better. Now, in the PvP sense, the only league I could see Palkia really working out in is the Master League. And the problem that it has in the Master League is it's not so good against the Elite Four Masters of the Master League, being Groudon, Lugia, Melmetal, and Giratina. It's not downright awful against them, it's just a little bit too slow with its heavy cost charge moves. Now, I don't want to downplay Palkia too much because it is pretty good in PvP. With the Dragon Breath damage, you could take out your opponent's second Pokemon, and then you could have Draco Meteor charged up again to like nuke their last Pokemon if they don't have any shields. So that is something that could take place with Palkia, but in order for that to work, you kind of rely on your opponent not having a shield at the end, or not having a Pokemon that can counter a Dragon type really well at the end. So I don't think you can really bet on that too well. So for that reason, I don't really recommend Palkia as a like good power-up for PvP. It's not a bad PvP Pokemon. You can get wins with it most certainly. I just don't feel like it'd be very consistent for wins. So, and with the Master League being so steep for investments to begin with, I think you're probably better off sticking your rare candies and Stardust into something else like Giratina or Melmetal. So that is my Palkia content. If you got any questions on this content, comment below, let me know what's up, and I'll do my best to help you out. And if you enjoyed this content and you want to see some more raid guides from me, maybe you want to see some of my PvP information, well then make sure to subscribe to SwagTips. Swag.